and our modern secret space program here in the U.S. With that whole Operation Paperclip, bringing all those scientists over from NASA to kind of reestablish, hide their war crimes, um, and start a new setup here in the U.S. And that all happened post World War II, 1947, and that that kind of post-war environment. You go through the history of, there was this whole secret space program that really started to come out, years ago, and then, of course, right around the same time, David Wilcox and Corey Goode came out with their whole secret space program stuff, and it was all like, I believe, disinformation or distraction, to kind of like break people away from a lot of the, they had some real stuff mixed in, just to confuse a lot of people.
Yeah, that's how it
But
works.
they they were really distracting from a lot of the researchers out there. Like, these private researchers are always like, anyone who's starting to get anywhere in this kind of field kind of like gets shadow banned and pigeonholed into and then they start trying to target you and feed you a lot of disinformation. I noticed, like, I had set up these forums, the AlienScientist forums, back in the day. I don't know, many of you were part of that. um, they were so they got so infiltrated with just disinfo. But it's crazy because the more disinfo that got on there, the more it got promoted in the algorithms. So I was starting to make like $1,000, 2,000, like almost 2,000, upwards of like $2,000 a month, just in residual income off the website and the ads, just of all these forums of just people just talking about, the most craziest stuff. And the crazier it got, the more comments and the more, arguments it seemed to attract. And I noticed that back in the day, but I'm sure the other internet algorithms have really taken note of this. And also, um, the disinformation has taken note of this. And if I had like I don't have the programming knowledge, but I know people who do. I've talked to people who really are good with that stuff. And if they had like a facility, you could just have a whole bunch of computers that had bots and disinformation that would constantly just pump out, nonsense. And that's sort of, I've seen the tactic that's been taken over since, I don't know, say like 2000, 2000, right when I started my channel. About That was like right when things started heating up, and I got so discouraged that I just like dropped off of YouTube entirely. And that was not a bad that was a that turned out to be a real bad idea, because like 2011 to 2014 turned out to be like the key year for like make or break for a lot of big, huge YouTube channels. That's when like a lot of independent people got like really big, that were at the start of YouTube. And I was there, I was there at the start of YouTube, and I could have done better. And I don't know if that like sort of pigeonholed my channel, because it didn't take off in those years and it got so old, and then I tried to bring it back later and it got outdated. But yeah, I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about like pure JFK stuff. Computer up and I can look up stuff.
Yeah, so the new information that we learned this year, I believe, was that the FBI and or the CIA were much more involved with Lee Harvey Oswald. Is that right? I think that's what.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So jfkpain.com came out. Uh, this is a website with a ton of new documents and information on the connection between Mrs. Ruth Paine, who is the key witness for over 80% of the Warren Commission's account of the whole Lee Harvey Oswald narrative and story. And Mrs. Ruth Paine, um, it turns out that her sister was, deep agent for the CIA for a number of years, and also that she had like a lesbian affair with one of Alan Dulles' mistresses, which is, in 1963, that would have been, very, it seems really weird. There's a lot of people who were involved. Like David Ferry was this guy with the CIA recruiter for the Civil Air Patrol, and the Civil Air Patrol is recruited Lee Harvey Oswald at like age 17, and that's where he got into the cadets, and Lee Harvey Oswald eventually got into the Marines afterwards. And
That's a really loud buzzing.
yeah, I turned that off. Sorry about that. Um,
You're good.
um,
Yeah, just one little side note. If you could post a lot of like links so we can read more about what we're talking about and stuff, because I'm sure that everybody wants to, you know, see the
where do I
actual
post
like.
the links?
Oh, well, you see the little thread bubble on the lower right?
Okay, yeah, there's
You
that
you could
bubble.
press that, and then you just post your reply, and you could just like post articles, websites, like the website that you just said. Um,
Oh, okay.
so that would be really helpful to do that, and I'm looking forward to reading more about what we talk about too.
All right. So here's the page jfkpaine.com that has all these new documents about the Paines and all the, like, a lot of the, it does a good job of connecting the dots, but you'll have to like really read through it, and I'll give you like an overview which will help you. And the whole idea is that Lee Harvey Oswald was in New Orleans when he came back from defecting to Soviet Union, Russia. Okay, I'm skipping a little bit. First, he got inducted to the Civil Air Patrol with David Ferry, who's this homosexual man who was running the Civil Air Patrol at the time, and apparently like recruiting people into intelligence operations, because Lee Harvey Oswald was in the Civil Air Patrol, and then he went into the Marines, and then he went into the Air Force in Atsugi, Japan, right? And was stationed in Atsugi, Japan, where the U-2 spy plane was run out of. And then he was also there in the Civil Air Patrol alongside a guy named Roscoe White, who ended up going to Atsugi, Japan with Oswald, and serving also at the base. I don't know if it was at the same time. It might have been like a little bit different. But afterwards, they both wind up in Dallas years afterwards. So apparently, Lee Harvey Oswald's working as an air traffic radar control operator at Sugi. Knows about this U-2 spy program, knows about some classified information with the CIA and what they're running with the U-2 flights over the Soviet Union at the time. Ends up defecting to the Soviet Union in amidst of a bunch of other people who the Soviet Union suspects that all these people are double agents trying to infiltrate their intelligence infrastructure, and they go forward with this whole. They bring Lee Harvey Oswald in, but don't give him anything, and then somehow he manages to meet Marina Oswald, who's just the daughter of a Russian lieutenant, and then he marries her and is able to bring her back to the United States. Really weird, right? So like normally, her wouldn't, Marina Oswald would being like family member connected to Russian military, would not have been granted, immigration papers to the U.S. That she would not have been accepted. So, but some reason there's some kind of backdoor intelligence thing going on where he's, now he's a double agent. It didn't work out as a double agent, but he's coming back with this other woman who, now that they can treat as a disinfo, they can just feed her disinfo. I think that was the operation from the get go, because they knew that, you know, it was basically like they had hooked Marina Oswald up with Lee when he went there, because they kind of like made this arrangement, and then sent Lee Harvey Oswald back with this Russian spy in tow to send a message to the U.S. government that like, hey, we're onto your operation, and we can play that game too. And so then we have Lee. So automatically in the CIA files in early 1963, Lee would have, or 62 when he came to Dallas, he would have been in the CIA's files as someone that's like, all right, this is someone who's you know like, you just got to get this whole new picture of Oswald from that, and all this was left out of the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission relied mainly on Ruth Payne's testimony, and now the fact that Ruth Payne has come out to be like so affiliated with the CIA. She's the woman that brought the Oswalds from New Orleans to Dallas, gave them the apartment in New Orleans where Lee Harvey Oswald stayed at, hooked them up with the job. Lee up with the job at the School Book Depository building, where he would later allegedly shoot the president from the sixth floor of, when witnesses saw him on the, drinking a Coke in the break room, calmly. It seems like he was set up as a patsy by the CIA because of his connections with, and then Roscoe White comes into question too, because he later ends up being a Dallas police officer, and he's a police officer working for the Dallas police on November 22nd, 1963, alongside some other, the chief of police, who was, basically when the assassination happened, all the officers left the police station except for two officers, and those two officers remain behind, and their whereabouts is questionable. And one question is that he left the deputy in charge. I forget the guy's name, who was the police chief that was left at the station, but apparently, like, there's a conspiracy theory that he was the one that shot Tippit, because Tippit knew about the connection between Oswald and Ruby at the Carousel Club, and they had to get Ruby to get rid of Oswald because of that connection at the Carousel Club. And they told him, like, listen, your business is going down, everything's going down for you. There's a lot of stuff we know about you that's going to catch up with you, and you might as well just shoot Oswald and go to prison for that. And we'll take care of you in prison, and all this other stuff will go away with your mob affiliations that we now know about through the FBI's investigations. Because the FBI was like, back in those days, they were into like investigating all this mob stuff, and a lot of times they would use those investigations to leverage further stuff to learn more about the mob, and to just to dig and pry deeper into those organizations. It's common knowledge that they worked with Whitey Bulger here in Boston, um, and you know even may have assisted in covering up some of those crimes, just to dig deeper into the organization, and get more information and evidence, as part of what they do. And you guys are still there, right? Oh, I got another request to speak. Oh yeah, and Tupac's here. Dude requested to join.
Good afternoon. I really love what you're putting forward. Would you like some more backstory to the leading up to the assassination?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you go ahead? They'll give me some time to bring up some links and look up some stuff.
Well, the first thing, you got to take it back to the beginning. We had a world war to cover up the massacre of the Russian royal family. From there, we fast forward. Remember, it was Woodrow Wilson at the behest of Winston Churchill that told General White he was a day late. And the power that was instilled was Vladimir Lenin with the Bolshevik Revolution, who had a right hand man by the name of Joseph Stalin. Well, let's fast forward from that. Let's move up to prior to the JFK assassination. Uh, JFK did not trust many people in government around him, and he had actually, and this is on video testimony, sent a journalist over to Russia to broker a peace deal, uh, especially with everything that had gone on with Cuba. And we were being told one thing and led to
Yeah,
believe
the
another.
Cuban Missile Crisis with Khrushchev. So for people who don't know what happened with Cuba, the Russians put a bunch of missile silos, basically like ICBMs with nukes pointed at the U.S. right in Cuba. And they were and we were like, oh, what the heck? And they were like, well, you got nuke bases in where were they, Poland or like I forget where our nuke bases was, but they were in like in Europe somewhere. And pointed at the right at Moscow. So like they were basically like, well, there was this high, that's what basically started the Cold War. And the Cold War was like this basically raise. It was like I'll raise you and like nuclear arms. When was Tsar Bomba? Tsar Bomba was the biggest nuke ever detonated, and basically it was like this combination, like this nuke off to see who could build the biggest nuke. You know, and that was July 1961, right? And it was basically like Teller like created this Ulam. Teller and Ulam created the H bomb, and that was like the ultimate like nuclear weapon at the time. And then the Russians like had their intelligence units like sabotaging and infiltrating all of our stuff, so they knew everything we were all about, and they were just like they built a bigger one and detonated it, and that was basically the end. It's like, all right, well, if you build anything bigger than this, it's really gonna like mess stuff up. And that goes back to the Oppenheimer, that calculation of like, well, at some point, this could cause a catastrophic runaway. If you build a big enough nuke, it will just nuke everything and just destroy everything into a black hole. All of our entire atmosphere could go up in a spontaneous chain reaction, and all life on the planet and everything could just vanish into nothing instantly. Right. So that was this whole battle that went on up until 1961. So this is 2 years before the JFK assassination was Tsar Bomba. So obviously they knew about like the nuclear weapons and stuff, but there was another weapon and other weapons that and technologies and things of that nature that also play a role in this, because you have the Redstone Arsenal with the secret space program that existed from 1947 until 1958, when we created NASA and we had an official space program. Before that it was NACA and Ames Research Labs, which, by the way, Thomas Townsend Brown demonstrated all his stuff to Ames Research Labs, got told that he was a fool in the 1940s, and was basically banished into like nothing. And meanwhile, the Ames Research Laboratory scientists used Brown's ideas to break the sound barrier in 1947 with Chuck Yeager. So this is, leading at like, 15 years before the assassination. Um, they're developing Brown's technology. And then Thomas Townsend Brown in 1955, 1956, he links up with Roger Babson, the air conditioner millionaire down in North Carolina, who funds Babson Laboratories. And, he works from 1956 to 1959 in the background, parallel to NASA. NASA used a lot of this research and knew a lot about this, but it was all classified and kept, this was all like super secret back then. It's just now been declassified many years later through, through other sources, but like that whole era of the 1950s anti-gravity research with Babson and Bonson, right? Oh, this was Bonson Laboratories in North Carolina. Sorry, Babson was the other guy up in Tufts University that funded the father and son team of Teller and was it Lewis Teller and Edward Teller, right? And these are the guys that pioneered the 1950s anti-gravity research. And Edward Teller is like the modern founder of string theory. He's literally like the top physicist, the top scientist. When Eric Weinstein asks like, who are the top physicists? Who's the top physicist in the world right now? He's talking about Edward Teller. And Edward Teller and his work, like of just revolutionizing and sending physics down these paths of string theory and stuff. And the father-son team, that it's strange that all of our modern physics is spawned out of physics that was generated through this father-son team in the 50s that worked on anti-gravity. And it's posits that maybe we were all misled to kind of like throw us off on the wrong path. Like, yeah, do your PhD in string theory, do your PhD on this, knowing it's a false path, that it's not, it's just really complex mathematics. It's really hard to do. And then you'll get like these physicists are arguing with each other over this really complex mathematics and which one of them is better at doing it, until we get to the point in 2023 where like like in grad school, you do all this on computers and stuff now, and with computer modeling, and it's no longer we have AIs and other algorithms and stuff to really handle and crunch all the hard tensor calculus and really hard numbers and matrices and that kind of stuff that's difficult for humans to like deal with on a formal technical basis. We can do that all like really easily with computers now. So it's really starting to unravel that maybe you go back to the 60s when JFK was assassinated, and you go back to the 50s, even earlier, with all this anti-gravity research, that maybe there was some things and certain things that were purposely covered up. And it could have gone on earlier than that, even with the reformalization that Maxwell did. Although that's a conspiracy in and of itself, because then why would Maxwell, purposely did Maxwell just do this accidentally? He was like, oh, we're just going to drop out these terms and out of the Heaviside-Gibbs equations. We're just going to drop out these terms and make it a simpler formalism with just these four equations. You get the four equations that were adapted from Ampere's law, Gauss's law, the no curl law, like the four Maxwell's equations. There's the differential and integral form of each one, and they're all based on the continuity equation, which is held that like it's basically like there's no contributions from the outside or inside, which is not physical of any real system, and eliminates the ability to harness outside systems. So it's an isolated systems equation, which is great for solving things, and led to a lot of revolutions in math and science. Like magnetism. Like Tesla studied Maxwell's equations and used it to engineer like a lot of his devices. So these were powerful tools, but nonetheless, of their short sights of this apparent like V cross pointing vector thing that was pointed out on one of our by David Rossi on the last Sal Pay's podcast that I did on AlienScientist. he goes into that. And also, if you want to know more about the whole Higgs heaviside, both not Higgs, but the heaviside Gibbs reformalizations into Maxwell's equations, look up. Let me post this to Richard Bandurek for that. Oh, I don't know how to post it. Let me just find it. There we go. Richard Bandurek. And on APEC. Okay, look that up on AlienScientist YouTube. And Richard Bandurek goes into that in great detail if you guys, anyone who's interested in that. But this is all like turn of the century science that was kind of hidden or lost in some ways. Maybe they just are like, oh well, this using these just four equations are much easier than teaching people this whole, Higgs heaviside Gibbs. Sorry, not Higgs, the heaviside Gibbs. I keep calling it Higgs, and it's heaviside Gibbs. Sorry. Anyways, this is whole 1950s leading up to the 1960s. Then you also, 1954, you have Batista getting overthrown in Cuba by Fidel Castro. The Castro regime comes in. They outlaw all of the gambling and casinos, and also I think they instill prohibition. So they get rid of all the gambling and all the alcohol. So all those bad guys, Meyer Lansky, the Jewish mafia, all the gamblers and the mafia, the cartels and stuff get kicked out of Cuba. And where do they go? Miami. Where do they go? New Orleans. They come back to the U.S. and they go to the nearest, mob scenes, and they kind of are instilling their roots and running their things there. And of course, who's connected with some of that stuff? The mafia was used historically, through to do like dirty work domestically. So if you have to do dirty work foreignly, like you use these hit teams and these trained assassin squads, and you get you get foreign military, and you can have these anonymous people that come in and do black ops and stuff, and that's all good. But if you want to do domestic operations, it gets a little tricky. So you gotta they've historically done it through the mob. And that way, if it traces back, they can be like, oh, it's the mob, and it's just the mob. And it's, it's a much easier way for the intelligence community to do those kinds of operations domestically, is through the mob. So the mob comes from Cuba. They want to get back into Cuba. The mob's desperate. They want to overthrow that Castro regime, and get a CIA friendly leader in there that will actually, the CIA tried for years to assassinate Castro. So this is all the pre stuff that's going on. Cuba is like, under the Castro regime, he's like, well, fuck the US and the CIA. I'm going to, start talking to Russia and, agree to put some of these nuke silos on my property, So that happens. And then, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bay of Pigs. The Bay of Pigs is Operation Zapata. Zapata Oil Company was run by George H.W. Bush. Very interesting connection, that you get into the Bush family and the JFK assassination. Russ Baker goes into this a lot on his website. I'm just going to post that in the bottom description. It's called Who, What, Why.com. Yes, whowhatwhy.com. And the guy's name is Russ Baker. All right. He wrote a book called Family of Secrets, which goes into the JFK assassination and some also like Bush W. Bush's time in the National Guard, where he defected from the National Guard, somehow got an honorable discharge, uh, possibly involved in some kind of cocaine smuggling operation from South America. Um, the headquarters for the Zapata oil in South America was Medellin, Colombia. Go figure. So there's this whole theory that, the cocaine smuggling, the Contras, all that stuff that happened throughout the 70s and 80s was a product development of these covert forces, which, assassinated the president and on 1963, 60 years ago today, took control of our government and have been running, sort of these covert operations and dynamics and growing and expanding in the background ever since. You look into, everything that happened in the aftermath of, 60 years ago today. So 63, you go into the 60s, they really put the hush on the anti-gravity research. It seems to have gone into a complete black hole throughout the 60s. Lots of laser research and high energy physics research and that kind of stuff is going on. But that kind of like the UFO technology and debris, it seems like they got scared of whatever they saw in the 50s. With Battelle and the Battelle studies that were done with J. Elroy Center, the scientist. Elroy Center said that he's been given UFO debris while working at Battelle in the 1940s, and right after Roswell. And he wrote a study in 1949. It's published in the second progress report by Battelle on how to analyze titanium alloys of unknown origin. And they spend a specific amount of attention to titanium nickel alloys, which of course form memory metals, shape retention alloys, which weren't officially discovered until 1958, 10 years later, with the discovery of nitinol wire, which stands for nickel titanium NOL, Naval Ordnance Labs, where it was discovered, allegedly. Not back engineered or anything. But this is, again, we go back to the 1940s. Operation Paperclip brings over a host of technologies, including anechoic tiles. Okay. Does anyone know what anechoic tiles are? Let me just hit a thumbs up if you know what anechoic tiles are. They're metamaterials. The Nazis developed metamaterials. Look up U-480. I actually learned about this watching television and a special on World War II and stealth subs that was on demand. Yeah, so anechoic tiles are metamaterials that they coated the submarines with. So the Nazis brought over this technology of metamaterials with them. And then with the metamaterials that they brought over, they started a whole research program into this. And of course, 1946 was the discovery of nuclear magnetic resonance by Edward Mills Purcell, who was later hired to head the CIA's Project Rainbow, which investigated all of these alleged effects of electromagnetic frequencies and radiation on all different sorts of materials and the back spectrum feedback that would be caused by those. So Project Rainbow goes through, I think it was like 1958. It was started right around the same time as NASA. And that's run all through the 1960s in the background. And that's why a lot of stuff disappears, is because they created this place to do all this crazy back engineering and weird outside the box research. Multi-million dollar facility in the middle of the desert out in Groom Lake, Rachel, Nevada, Area 51, as it's called. And that was created in the late 1950s, of course, a couple of years, and they were doing all this night. So, was it 57, 56, 57 that they started creating Area 51? So by 1963, you got the CIA running all kinds of crazy operations out at Area 51. They've been doing a decade's worth of research into anti-gravity out at Bonson Labs and Babson, and down at Rias, down in Maryland, right? So they had a facility in Maryland with Lewis Kaufman, not Lewis Kaufman, sorry, Lewis Witten and Ed Witten, not Teller. I said Teller before, didn't I? I'm mixing all these names up. Witten, Lewis Witten, and Ed Witten were doing the research back in 1950s, right? For Rias and for this was for Lockheed Martin, Martin Marietta Corporation. It was Glenn L. Martin Corporation. It was back before it was Martin Marietta Corporation. Before it was Lockheed Martin. So this is like the early days of anti-gravity research and these classified programs, which, we're just now, trying to put the pieces together and figure all this stuff out because it's been classified for so long. This has got to be the reason why JFK was assassinated. And E. Howard Hunt's lawyer even claimed that the reason that, for all this was because of, the technology and because of the UFO file, because they don't want to tell the public the truth. They've done all this research into anti-gravity in the 50s. They did, you get NASA's created in 1958. JFK says, we're going to have this mission. We're going to put a man on the moon. We're going to create a space-based civil. We're going to start pushing humanity forward, make this leap. We made decades of progress in just a few short years in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s. It was like a golden age for this country. And what's happened since has just been a military industrial complex, CIA, big banker nightmare. It's absolutely insane. So 1963, all right. So you get this. Now they're in a mission. I think it was 1961, 62. When was MK Ultra started? Early 60s, right? They're on a mission to control people's minds all throughout the 60s, especially after this assassination. They want people to be able to not. You're a conspiracy theorist and you're fucking wacko, and if you believe in any of this stuff, any of the truth. And they really did a number on trying to get away with people with that, and then even RFK starting to look into his brother's assassination, and then interesting connection, the RFK assassination. Sirhan was going to see a doctor somewhere in California, and he writes in his notes this stuff about the Boston Strangler guy. What was his name? He writes in his journal, and the guy, it turns out that the CIA therapist, the psychologist who worked with the Boston Strangler to get the confession, was a CIA hypnotist who put him under hypnosis and got the confession out of him through hypnosis. And it was a guy named William J. Bryan, Bryan, and interesting stuff. This is to the 60s. William J. Bryan's running this CIA hypnotist facility out in California. Sirhan's apparently there, gets hypnotized by the CIA therapist to go shoot RFK. RFK's at the hotel. There's this new security guard there that works for Lockheed Martin, of all places. First day on the job there, hired as extra security. This Lockheed Skunk Works security guard brought in. His name's Thane Eugene Caesar. And he follows RFK into the pantry where a hypnotized CIA patsy, Sirhan, is waiting there with a 6-shot revolver. As RFK enters the pantry, Sirhan is programmed to open fire upon him. He does so, unloading all 6 shots in his pistol before he's wrestled to the floor. Amid the gunfire, Paul Schrade is shot in the face. Paul Schrade later testifies that Sirhan was not the person who shot RFK, that he couldn't have shot RFK from where he was standing, and that RFK had ducked to cover and already been the only person who could have shot RFK was the person standing directly behind them, who was Thane Eugene Caesar, the security guard for Lockheed Skunk Works, who was escorting him into the pantry. So they found extra bullets. They couldn't account for the bullet that shot JFK. According to the autopsy, he was shot from the back and from the behind. A quick upward shot, from a concealed weapon from someone, standing directly behind him, really close, leading him into the pantry, obviously using him as a human shield. And then, later escaping and using that excuse that he was just fleeing from the gunfire as his excuse. And 2 other CIA agents were observed in the pantry that night. There's a documentary you can watch. It's called RFK Must Die. I think you might have to pay for it to go watch it. But RFK Must Die by Shane O'Shaughnessy. He's an Irish filmmaker, and he made this great film, and it's been really suppressed. I swear, this guy's got approached by the CIA, and they're like, "Don't talk about this anymore." But it shows that George Joannides and Gordon Campbell, 2 CIA agents, were at the Ambassador Hotel the night that RFK was assassinated as well. And this is interesting because this goes back again to the JFK assassination in a couple different ways. George Joannides working at, of course, JM Wave, which is the CIA station in Havana, Cuba, and organizing the Bay of Pigs operation. One of the key guys, hated JFK for not coming through with the firepower for the Bay of Pigs invasion. Hated RFK. Obviously, some kind of beef there with other things going on. He's of course connected with these secret space program guys, as Dark Journalist has pointed out, who's the guy he's always pictured with. And anyone can request to be a speaker if you guys want to jump in and add some stuff to this, by the way. But you have this guy, Fred Chrisman. Fred Chrisman was subpoenaed by Jim Garrison in the Warren Commission investigation. And the Warren Commission, not the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission was a fraud, but run by Allen Dulles, who was one of JFK's enemies. And it was 80% based on Ruth Payne's testimony, who, as we know with that JFK Payne site in the link down below, she's a CIA agent, brought Lee Harvey Oswald from New Orleans to Dallas, got him the job at the School Book Depository building with Harold Bird. the guy who owned the school book depository building, Harold D. Harold Bird, D.H. was uh, you know, David Harold Bird, but they referred to him as Dry Hole Bird because he was drilling all these holes, and he was protected with this thing called the oil depletion allowance, which if you didn't get any oil, you still got paid back for trying to prospect and look for oil, even though you didn't, it was like basically the government's way of saying, thanks for, sharing this. And they would keep this map of all the explored oil lands in the U.S. So that they could keep control, track of U.S. oil assets and stuff. So this oil depletion allowance was something JFK was trying to get rid of and do away with, and wanted to move us toward more alternative and clean energies and whatnot. And of course, these oil mongers in Dallas were owned. There was a lot of oil money in Dallas, a lot of oil money in Texas in general. Wanted to get away with do away with um, that oil money. I mean, do away with JFK because he was trying to get away with. He was trying to do away with the oil depletion allowance. So that was like a whole angle on this conspiracy, that the oil depletion allowance was a reason for this, Clint Murchison meeting with all these oil millionaires who met, suspiciously, before JFK was assassinated. There's this theory that they were meeting to discuss, reason, their common ground and why they needed to, team up to do away with this. But D. Harold Bird also had some other secrets. His uncle was Admiral Byrd, who had ran the Antarctica expeditions. So apparently, there's this whole other conspiracy theory that the Nazis had a base in Antarctica, and that this Antarctica expedition had found that the Nazis had found all this crazy stuff of a civilization that exists underneath Antarctica that had been there since before the pole shift, and there's pyramids and stuff and all kinds of crazy artifacts, and they're investigating this in some secret base down there in Antarctica, according to some conspiracy theorists. Although it's so cold and desolate down there, I just can't see how anything like that could be done. And there's lots of other people in Antarctica talking about other conspiracy theories of of stuff that they're running down there. They got the Ice Cube neutrino facility, possibly repurposed as a phased array radar system. You have the this these Antarctica expeditions that were actually run down there by Harold Bird. They lost this thing that they had developed to go down there and the Explorer craft. I forget what it was called, but they lost it down there looking for signs of Antarctica. They barely got out alive. But apparently, there's all these conspiracy theories that he saw stuff or knew stuff about Antarctica, and had another expedition to look for certain things. They were held classified, I'm sure there's rumors, and they don't want those getting out to the more general public. But I'm sure they are interested in tracking those things down themselves. But they would keep something like that classified. If they're like, oh, well, we heard rumors that there's pyramids and ancient civilizations down there. May or may not be true, but they could be looking for it, and they would have kept that classified, obviously, for reasons. But there's all that whole connection. D. Harold Bird also ran this company. It's an aerospace research company that ended up doing a lot of. I forget if they made helicopter parts or something else, but they ended up making a lot of money post in the Vietnam War and in the years afterwards. And I know they did some, interesting, potentially classified research. They would have to have these companies to do a lot of this classified research. And you know what? That's still an area that really needs to be explored. Tecmo Voigt or something like that. I forget the name of their Harold Bird's company there. This is the owner of the Texas School Book Depository building, who knew Ruth Paine, was good friends with Ruth Paine. The Paynes, were 80% of the Warren Commission testimony. They brought Lee Harvey Oswald from New Orleans to Dallas, got him that job. In New Orleans, Lee Harvey Oswald was, where was Lee Harvey Oswald living and what was he doing in New Orleans? Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know all the answers. I know that he was handing out Fair Play for Cuba committee flyers with the address of 544 Camp Street on them, and was photographed and by somebody and take a note of that, which is interesting because 554 Camp Street was Guy Bannister's office, FBI in New Orleans. And Guy Bannister is the FBI agent who is credited with the originator of the FBI's X Files, right? So this guy investigated like the Maury Island incident. He investigated Kenneth Arnold sightings in the UFO wave in 1947. He was involved in UFO cases as far back as the 30s, some other hoaxes and other UFO thing like cases and hoaxes. So these guys, you have Guy Bannister and Fred Chrisman apparently running the UFO file for a number of years. Chrisman was in the military running this, and then apparently he gets out in the 40s and retires and goes and becomes this high school teacher, where he's a substitute, so he can go missing for, all kinds of periods on end if he needs to go get assigned to a case. He's just a substitute teacher, and then he gets fired from that substitute teaching job for trying to start a secret society with 5 students, which is super weird and interesting. And then he gets fingered by Jim Garrison's investigation as one of the 3 tramps that were in Dealey Plaza arrested in the train yard, and one of the train cars, right behind the grassy knoll, which was about to leave and exit the area. Very curious, So the JFK assassination itself, you have some witnesses like Lee Bowers. He was the train yard guy. If you look up Lee Bowers, very interesting testimony of seeing these guys set up and cordon off that whole area behind the grassy knoll. Showed Secret Service credentials and whatnot. You have this confirmed by another witness, Gordon Arnold, who said he was filming right there next to the grassy knoll, and about 25 feet from Abraham Zapruder. And right after the assassination, he says a policeman jumped over, shot the president with a rifle. He saw them shoot the president. He handed the rifle to a train yard worker, who then walked away with the rifle towards, like the train yard, just calmly and slowly dismantling it as he walked, right? And then this policeman then jumped over the fence, showed him an Uzi, and demanded his film. I didn't show him the Uzi right away. He said, "I got to take the film." He was crying when he jumped over the fence. This police officer was crying, and asked him for the film, made him give him the film. I guess he wasn't going to give him he asked him to give him the camera, and he's like, "Oh, this is my mother's camera. I can't give you the camera." He said, "Well, you're going to give me the film," and he pulled out a gun. So he gave him the film, and I guess he was a military man. He was about to be redeployed, and he got redeployed and went to Alaska. Gordon Arnold, the guy who witnessed this, you can look up his witness testimony. And, he's apparently, testimony to this guy Badgeman, who's the police officer, or a guy that was dressed as a Dallas police officer who was the assassin, on the grassy knoll that day. And some people think that Roscoe White, Lee Harvey Oswald's old Civil Air Patrol and Atsugi Air Force Base buddy, maybe potentially was Badgeman on the grassy knoll. It's one theory. It could have also been, a CIA assassin or one of these Cubans that were, dressed as a police officer for cover. You could have had all you could, if you had the CIA in operation that day with Secret Service and stuff, you could have one Secret Service agent, out watching over three CIA agents, two spotters and a gunman, and no would be the wiser that they weren't. The CIA and the Secret Service routinely has snipers up. I remember when Hillary Clinton came here to Boston and was talking at Symphony Hall, and my friend was out there with a sign like protesting her, about how she killed Vince Foster and those kids on the train tracks and all the other murders and cover-ups that the Clintons have been involved with over their horrific political career with the CIA cocaine smuggling in and out of Mena, Arkansas, that got him into the White House in the first place, and all and everything else. Mena, Arkansas, with Barry Seal, running cocaine into Mena, Arkansas, and Bill Clinton as government, Bill Clinton as governor, overseeing that whole operation. Really, a lot of interesting, connections there. Then you have, you know, sorry to get sidetracked, but I was talking about this fact that there were snipers on the roof at the friggin' Hillary Clinton thing, man. And they like, that's the Secret Service. They have snipers up, their own snipers up everywhere. So you wouldn't be able to tell, like, who was Secret Service or, part of this, CIA hit team. And everything was so secretive and disparate, like the film quality and evidence collection wasn't as good in 1963. They could get away with so much. And they hid that Zapruder film for a decade or more, until 1970s. I think it wasn't brought out on Geraldo. Um, Time Magazine bought it and just shelved it. Like, they wouldn't show it publicly and they wouldn't let anyone see it. Um, and But the whole what happened in Dallas that day, a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting connections have been pointed out, man. The Lloyd Burke, like, apparently he was JFK was going to the Trade Mart. He would have gone under the triple underpass and gone straight and gone to the Trade Mart. That was their next destination, where he was going to meet with Lloyd Berkner. And apparently the whole discussion was going to be about disclosure and how to get, like, this information out to the public. And he was going to basically, JFK was on his way to the Trade Mart to give Lloyd Berkner the documents and disclosure. That's a weird theory. JFK knew some stuff. Apparently, he told Marilyn Monroe some pillow talk about, UFO file stuff, and that's what ended up getting Marilyn Monroe assassinated. And Marilyn Monroe had bragged a couple things to Dorothy Kilgallen, who was kind of investigating the whole thing simultaneously. Her last interview Dorothy Kilgallen did was with Jack Ruby, and then mysteriously she wound up dead. So there's that whole interesting connection with Jack Ruby at the Carousel Club. Lots of cops came into the Carousel. Jack Ruby knew all the cops. So why do you think he was allowed to get down in the basement of the Dallas police station that day and get so close to the prisoner, Lee Harvey Oswald, as he was escorted to the van? It's because he knew all the Dallas cops. He used to go there and hang out every morning and bring them donuts. And all those cops, after work, they used to go to the Carousel Club and hang out with the strippers. It's a great place to, collect intelligence on the street scene and learn things. So Jack Ruby was this low bit gangster his clubs were going under, and he was also Nixon's guy, apparently. Like, he worked under some of Nixon's people when he was in the Chicago scene in Chicago before he went to Dallas. So Ruby's is just a really interesting character, and I think he was Ruby was also gay, so he didn't care about um and his lover, I guess, like, was apparently involved in some of this stuff. There's a whole big mess with, where Ruby's whereabouts and the whereabouts of, his lover there, the guy that used to stay with him, and stuff. I forget his name, but so there's this whole other scene that's not been, because Oswald was apparently picked up and dropped off by, either Ruby or Ruth Payne. The station wagon was seen around. There's all these weird connections, and then the JD Tippett murder. Who went and shot JD Tippett? There's all these different theories about that. Um, Posner has this thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, so much evidence has come out since that guy wrote that book, Case Closed." I don't think the case has been closed at all. I think it's a rush to judgment. I think rush to judgment is correct if people have, like, made up their mind and said, oh, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and he was definitely not affiliated with the CIA in any way, and he just shot the president because um, he was a communist, and he was Russian, and was a pro-Russian, and it was actually the Russians. It was the Russians that killed Kennedy, who threw Lee Harvey Oswald. I guess. I mean, what was Lee Harvey Oswald's motive according to the official theory? I mean, this guy's a CIA patsy through and through. It's like come out so much in the past, several years, and they've done so much to cover it up and keep it out of the general discussion, out of the public, out of the mainstream. Um, it should be obvious. Like the things that they put out on the History Channel and on mainstream television, you'll have these debunking things, which, like, they basically want you to believe in a magic bullet, that a magic bullet caused all those wounds and then wound up in pristine condition on that, medical stretcher in Parkland Hospital, where 9 doctors said that there was an entry wound in the throat, and 9 doctors said that the exit wound blew out the back of JFK's head. That means he shot the kill shot came from the front. There was a sniper at the grassy knoll. So many witnesses testified to that. You can see in the Nix film after the assassination that all these witnesses go and run towards the grassy knoll. They're trying to chase after the assassins, and where they're looking for the gunmen. Everyone went looking for that white picket fence and went looking over the white picket fence, looking for the gunmen in the aftermath of that assassination. And then you had a bunch of CIA agents standing around telling everybody that they heard shots from the school book depository, which they probably did. There was Mac Wallace's fingerprint, after all, found on one of the boxes up in the 6th floor of the school book depository building. And they probably had another sniper team up there. But, Lee Harvey Oswald on the 1st floor drinking a Coke, being a CIA patsy, I don't think he was the one that did it. According to the evidence that's just been presented, the sniper's nest, with the Mac Wallace fingerprint, if people want to look that up, Mac Wallace was an assassin for LBJ. He, like, killed a man and only did a little bit of time or something for it. And man, it's nuts if you look up the history of Mac Wallace. Mac Wallace apparently was one of these assassins, according to some theorists. So then you have those. Sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. You have the epileptic, right? So the epileptic in the seat has a seizure, apparent seizure, right? He probably put 2 friggin' Alka-Seltzer tablets in his mouth and pretended to have a seizure. Leaves the hospital without being checked in, so the ambulance comes and picks him up with the police, right? That causes a distraction for the sniper teams to get into place right before the assassination in Dealey Plaza, right, that morning. The he checks in, never checks into the office, leaves. Right. This was all in the JFK movie. If people watch the movie JFK by Oliver Stone, um, really great stuff. If you haven't seen it, I really think they should do like a part two with. But Jim Garrison looked into a lot of interesting people and a lot of interesting stuff. Clay Shaw, interesting guy. He ran this whole Permindex Corporation, and he was looking into Clay Shaw because Clay Shaw had all these business connections and looked like a CIA agent and one of these handlers, hanging out with guys like David Atlee Phillips, who might have been a CIA go-between for Lee Harvey Oswald and some of these other characters. They're all hanging out together. They got these strip clubs. But they're all this weird underground gay scene. It seems it's like there's so many, like you have Clay Shaw, homosexual, um, Jack Ruby, homosexual, Ruth Payne, homosexual. It's J. Edgar Hoover, covering up the assassination. He's a cross-dresser, prosecuting homosexuals while being one, like so many, closeted gay people. It's just a weird thing. It shows a sign of the times of like how they used these secrets to control people. Oh yeah, also David Ferry. So all like the key people you look into, um, so many of them. It turns out, and then Fred Chrisman, also never married, doing this weird secret society thing with the boys, gets kicked out of the school. Um, doing investigations in the UFO file, back into the 40s and Maury Island and Kenneth Arnold and all this other stuff with Guy Bannister's office, Guy Bannister creating the X Files, and this being where Lee Harvey Oswald's all operating out of in New Orleans prior to him going to Dallas, is this sort of nest of nefarious characters, you know. These were the characters that Lee Harvey Oswald was hanging out with in New Orleans. That's why the Clay Shaw got into this whole mess, because it gets into this, these allegations of this conspiracy. Trying to figure out these connections, and maybe Clay Shaw wasn't the right person for him to really look into. He should have subpoenaed, Harold Burt and Ruth Payne and really put Ruth Payne to the test. But she just the star witness for the Warren Commission, just this woman, this innocent, Quaker woman who just happened to bring, she was just out of the kindness of her heart, wanted to help the Oswalds, who are these, Russian immigrants, defectors, and potential intelligence people. She just wanted to help them out of the kindness of her heart and give them a place to stay and job and bring them to Dallas, where, all this was kind of being set up behind the scenes, it seems, by a lot of powerful and more interesting people than we're being told. Um, the other interesting thing is, sorry, and I was hoping that other people would chime in. Anybody else want to speak? How do I invite to speak? Yeah, I'll invite people to speak. People who've been here for a while. Oh, Tajinder Singh is here. Oh my God. This is a professor in India who's done remarkable theoretical physics work. I have so much respect for him. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. This is like a history lesson, and I'm trying to go over some of this stuff and remember as much as I can from my research into this over the years. Um, Anybody else? Lord Ludacris. Oh yeah, I gotta get that dude on. That dude's amazing. Invite to speak. Heck yeah, guys. I gotta grab a little bit to eat and maybe take a break at some point, but I want to keep a stream going. So I'd like to keep a discussion going on this whole JFK assassination file and conspiracy stuff, because there's so much that's come out of the files and the research and the literature from independent researchers who were called, conspiracy theorists for years. But if this was connected to the UFO file, which a lot of people have shown and really think it is, that with the connections between Lee Harvey Oswald and Guy Bannister creates the FBI's X Files. A lot of this UFO research that I pointed out happened in the 1950s. They were really taking this UFO stuff and the research seriously. It culminated, I think, as Eric Weinstein showed in 1957 with that University of Chapel Hill conference with Bryce DeWitt and DeWitt and Bryce and Cecil DeWitt, husband and wife team, working on one side. They were visiting Bonson labs regularly, and contributing to some of the experimental research there. Even according to some of the videos that we have of that, you can see them visiting the lab and working on a couple things too. It's still unclear all the history of everything that went on there and all those connections. But then you also have John Lear's father. John Lear's father is visiting Bonson Labs in the 1950s. He's in that authentic archival footage. So Lear having all these connections, and then his son being the CIA pilot who becomes this prolific CIA disinformation agent and is later the originator of the whole Bob Lazar story. The connections just can't be denied to the UFO. Like, this is pre-19 assassination UFO file stuff that's come out, and you just look at these people and where they're where everyone ended up. It's pretty crazy and mind-blowing to think about, especially with Johnson and Ruth Payne and this whole Bell Helicopters thing. There's some connections there with the people that made the military industrial complex made a ton of money on Vietnam and everything that wouldn't have happened under JFK. JFK was trying to bring peace to the world. He was trying to push space exploration and cooperation between nations. And he was going through secret back channels to prevent nuclear, Armageddon, dismantle the Cuban Missile Crisis, and get these back channels to Khrushchev. It's just crazy to think about the money and power systems that sort of operated behind the scenes to subvert our democratically elected government. And what we lost 60 years ago today, when JFK was assassinated and taken from us all. It's really crazy to think about where our future would have been, had JFK lived and his brother Bobby run and won the presidency, possibly even Martin Luther King, who was planning to run for president. Again, another suspected assassination of the CIA. In 74, or 72, I think it was the assassination. They had a select committee on assassinations, a House Select Committee on Assassinations, the HSCA. The HCS, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, was going to look into all these allegations of conspiracy theories and try to get to the bottom of this and investigate it and figure things out. But every time they had a key witness or someone who was, ready to reveal some really important details, they all seemed to just wind up committing suicide or dying mysteriously before they could testify. And this happened repeatedly to numerous witnesses of lots of different things throughout, the 70s. And the 80s and the decades afterwards, of things that happened. Like you had Barry Seal wax before he could testify, George DeMorenshield. You had David Ferry. You know, David Ferry was going to testify too. And all these people that were set to testify just wound up dead. Or wound up getting shot in the face, like Antonio Vesiani, um, who said, later was like, I ain't talking about nothing. I'm not saying anything. You've seen these people. These people tried to kill me before. Then they won't fail the next time. They're not going to talk. So many people got. You look up the history of all the witnesses to the JFK assassination. There's someone who's done a research study and shows this, of how many assassination witnesses just died mysterious deaths in the just the years after the assassination. It's just mind blowing. Um, oh, I see Tupac. You got your hand up, brother. Why don't you speak freely and be heard? If you're there, can you hear me? Okay, he's connecting. And anybody else want to speak, just please send a request. We're having, today is the 60-year anniversary of JFK's assassination. And so we're digging deeper into the UFO file, our lost, reclaimed, and we're reclaiming our history that's been, classified or censored or lost from us, and trying to make sense of this and understand it all in terms of what it means for the future of technology and these files of this research that's been classified and covered up. Oh, I don't know. He dropped out. I hope he comes back. Um, so much has been taken out of the literature and classified from us. Hoping that we can get further with uh, the pursuit of the truth, of what happened that day, man. It's just crazy how we have 60 years have gone by and the UFO file is still not declassified, and there's still secrets out there. The George Joanitas CIA file, which could connect to JFK and RFK, is still classified. That one is real key. George Joanitas is just, he was like the one of the CIA assassination experts, alongside this guy named David Sanchez Morales, a notorious CIA assassin. And they plotted and conducted, the assassination of countless South American dictators. In fact, like, you know, if David Sanchez Morales was seen in your city in South America, you know, that was like there was an indication that your leader was going to be assassinated soon. When you saw that guy walking around your city, it was like, all right, they're planning an assassination, because they wouldn't send this guy in for any other reason. It's his like job is to rig wet work for the CIA. Um, really crazy stuff. When you get into some of these CIA assassinations, and there's a CIA assassinations manual called the program was called PB Success. Usually most CIA files are 2 letters and then a word, a code word. You know, some interesting ones that connect to connect to JFK would be W.U. Briney. CIA Operation W.U. Briney was this, meeting in New York City with some interesting people, including George DeMorenshield, who was, potentially being given at that time instructions on how to handle Lee Harvey Oswald or other things. But it was this whole issue of this connection with, Cuban Sissel, and that they were discussing, you know, official business, but it's always a cover in those kind of things. It's like, this is the official reason we're meeting, but that's not the real reason, So you have to read through some of those intelligence documents, and sometimes um, it's so hard to like get a clear, solid smoking gun picture of what happened. But other than just looking at the physics of the Zapruder film and that, moment of the JFK head snap when he's shot by that bullet and his head just snaps back into the left, it's like, that bullet did not come from the sixth floor of the school book depository building. The head did not travel backwards towards the object, and they've tried to do all these documentaries, and they're like, oh yeah, the target always jumps towards, the bullet, and it's just it's just physics. It's how it works. And it's like, yeah, but it's conservation momentum, dude. Like, the whole head gets blown out the back and comes out, like, it comes out the top. A lot of it, you see like the debris come out the top of the head, and it's just, I don't want to get into it's so gruesome, the physics, but the physics just don't lie. It just that's what has me really, because I understand conservation momentum and physics, and I just can't buy the fact watching that film that he was not shot from the front, from the grassy knoll where everyone, so they saw gunmen setting up, snipers setting up in that train yard, and everything else. I really feel like there's something more to that whole story than we're being told. And that, Lee Harvey Oswald, his connections to the Civil Air Patrol with David Ferry, his connections to Atsugi Air Force Base, where he's this radar commander, has access to U-2, flight paths, radar codes, and all kinds of other um, inside intelligence on the real operations that they're running, right? So then he defects to the Soviet Union. Apparently, part of the defection was claiming that he had information that would be useful to the Soviets, right? What kind of information did he have that would be useful to the Soviets other than the U-2 spy plane program and the radar codes? So he brings that over. A month later, after Lee Harvey Oswald defects to Russia, apparently with that radar code and U-2 spy plane intelligence, that's when Francis Gary Powers is shot down over Russia. So how did the Russians get the intelligence to know that, the spy planes were and to shoot that spy plane down? Did Lee Harvey Oswald pass that intelligence to the Russians? Was it like an attempted, way to gain their trust to install a double agent, and then it didn't work out? And so they needed to get rid of this character. They just knew too much, and, was this wannabe spy, wannabe, James Bond type CIA agent that was involved in all this stuff and didn't talk, and, but at the, one point he said, I'm a patsy. There's that famous clip of Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm just a patsy. Well, I believe it, man. Dude was just a patsy. There are bigger players involved in this. And you're not crazy for believing in conspiracy theories. You're crazy if you believe the official reports, which are based on CIA agents like Ruth Payne, JFKPayne.com. The woman that, 80% of the Warren Commission's findings are based upon is this one woman's testimony, and looks like she's like a CIA asset through and through. It's a story that they won't tell you and they won't get into on the mainstream, and it's one that needs to be echoed and told more. I don't know. People need to do their own research into this. If I'm wrong on anything, I could be. It's been a while. I'm not. I don't have anything really in front of me to look this up. So I could be getting stuff wrong. So please correct me. Oh, that's not the guy I wanted. who was the first black Secret Service agent? Anyone ever heard this story? Abraham Bolden. Abraham W. Bolden. He was the first African American former United States Secret Service agent. Okay. He was in Chicago and noticed that when he was in Chicago that there was some weird things going on with the Secret Service. And it later turns out that there was like a plot to assassinate Kennedy in Chicago, and that it was going to be in Chicago with Nixon and some of these other guys. They had a whole nother plot in Chicago to assassinate Kennedy in Chicago with a different assassin. Man, what was the name of that assassin? It's got to be in my history. I'm gonna have to go through and find this because I posted this a while ago. There was a documentary on the JFK assassination, and they went all into this whole other Chicago plot. And they had another guy who was like Lee Harvey Oswald, had some other interesting, you know, background connections and stuff, and they were going to frame him apparently for the murder in Chicago. And that things didn't quite work out and just fell through there. And they ended up having to hit him in Dallas because things were much more organized and they were ready for him and waiting when he went to Dallas. And there's this whole idea that the all right, no, there's a whole not idea. There's this whole story that's never been really told about Abraham Bolden. And that Abraham Bolden, the Secret Service agent, was going to blow the whistle and speak out and testify to the, about his knowledge of this plot, right? And they charged him with a false crime, yeah, right here in 1964. So he was trying to testify about what had happened and blow the whistle on this whole assassination plot. And they framed him and set him up, got him arrested, sent to jail, ruined his career, ruined his reputation. And it's just amazing the history of what they did to this guy. And, he should be a poster child for all this, man. This is just, when I heard this story, I was like, you know, he's had to serve this sentence in Springfield, Missouri. Mark Lane and Richard Burns, these guys were assistant to Jim Garrison, and Mark Lane ended up, going in to these real lawyers that were about the truth, ended up going in to defend this guy. And they held a news conference in which they stated that they had received information from Bolden that the Secret Service was aware of a prior assassination attempt on Kennedy in Chicago. December 1967. According to the attorneys, the Secret Service had been informed that an attempt on the president's life would be made in Chicago, which resulted in the cancellation of his visit due to safety concerns. They stated that Bolden said that he and other agents had shadowed a suspect due to the report. On March 21st, 1970, Sherman Sholnick appeared on an FM radio program with Ted Weber of WTMX and stated that Bolden was falsely imprisoned to prevent him from revealing that there was a plot to kill Kennedy in Chicago. The Chicago Sunday Times reported that they attempted to contact Bolden regarding the allegations, but that he refused to comment. Yeah, why would he? These guys are freaking scumbags, dude. So like, there's so much conspiracy and stuff. It's when you really look into this, it's a mess, ladies and gentlemen. Our government is a freaking mess, and the people that got away with JFK They did this whole MK Ultra, mind control experiments through the 60s. They developed Manchurian candidates. They assassinated JFK's brother using one of these hypnotized patsies. William J. Bryan, the hypnotist who the CIA hired to do all this, they, started this whole drug smuggling operation. Nixon got put into presidency, started the war on drugs, started this whole um, it's just nuts. The Iran Contra scandal. They're smuggling cocaine, smuggling drugs while making them illegal to jack the price up so the street value goes through the roof, so that they can have this way of funding all these illegal CIA wars and all that cocaine money went to funding went to buying computers that went to Nicaragua. This is all documented in Gary Webb's book, Dark Alliance, the book Dark Alliance. Seen this stuff before. Dark Alliance, Gary Webb. And then also Gary Webb, two B's. And then also check out copbcia.com. That's Michael Rupert. Michael C. Rupert wrote a whole bunch of great books, and he's a former narcotics police investigator for LAPD who they tried to recruit him into like CIA agency drug operations, and he blew the whistle on it. Really fascinating story. People should. I just don't know why this isn't, on the nightly news, man. This needs to be taught to everybody. I don't know why we only have just. I'm stuck in like a shell of like the same small group of people who listen, and I can't get out. I can't seem to break outside of the bubble that they've created around this. They don't want this information getting out, man. Anybody else have any leaks? I see a few people in the audience that I don't really recognize. Does anybody have any information or leaks or any kind of things they want to bring forward? Sure. Otherwise, I'm gonna, take a break for a little bit, and I gotta get something to eat now. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and talk, guys. I've invited everyone to speak.
Oh, right on. Can you hear me, Jeremy? Can you hear me this time?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, cool. I'll try to keep it muffled. But yeah, man, this is wild. I didn't know that there were so many different factors surrounding the JFK assassination. It reminds me, Eric Weinstein talked about this in his American Alchemy interview with Hal Puthoff. When he's talking to Jesse Michaels afterwards, and he's like to think because he goes, what it sounds like is that after World War II, there were physics breakthroughs that were kept from the public, and that like if that was the case, he'd be like really surprised and really disappointed. But the fact, when we go into like Thomas Townsend Brown and even Ed Witten, it looks like there was a lot of suppressed scientific information. And then when you couple it with all the series of assassinations that took place, it's almost as if society was on a trajectory to do something, and then a lot of effort was put in to stopping that trajectory.
Absolutely. A lot of effort still being put into stopping that trajectory.
I'll just say I'm kind of mind blown and really appreciative of this space, Jeremy. I didn't know about any of this, and so I just wanted to thank you for hosting this space.
Yeah, this is crazy. And don't be afraid to chime in if my mic is really low. It happens. From the mysteries and honestly conspiracies that are pretty valid surrounding JFK's assassination, right? To a series of inventions that were kind of held back. And now we're catching up on it. We got like the same time, the same 10-year span between Roswell, the creation of the CIA, NASA. It's so many things all at one time. I can't help but think that it represents a official, or somewhat official step to prevent something from happening. I don't know if that thing is breakthrough physics or technology or disclosure. I don't know what it is, but to take out so many people in such a short period of time, to cloud and mask the physics breakthroughs that were happening at the time, to recruit and subdue, all these different narratives and these different scientists at the same time, man, this is really fishy now. Not that it was Bean, what do you think? How you doing?
Yeah, so I mean, 60 years have gone by, and this is a crazy story that's never been told. It's like almost like, Kurt Jemungel did a great job with that documentary he did on the whole 1950s anti-gravity research, you know, between the stuff that, I've been uncovering and Eric Weinstein's been uncovering. We've really reclaimed a lot of that forgotten or lost history. Um, we're starting to we're still putting a lot of the pieces together of so much stuff that went on that was kept from the public, and trying to link it all together. But this is all just in the years leading up to 1963, right, when at the peak of when JFK was assassinated. And it seems like this CIA, this rogue CIA element of the CIA sort of just took over, and it's been this sort of military industrial complex operation ever since. That seems like that's all it's been is you know the I don't know. There's a lot of I wonder about these theories about I didn't I used to discredit a lot of this stuff about the theories that um who could be really running this. Are these people even, you know is it just private interests that are just these banking families that just want to keep control of the money, and that's just how this goes. Is it the or is it you know other forces that are really trying to hold our technology and our civilization back for other reasons? I just wonder about that.
With like economics, the government can really step in and do a lot of stuff with like scientific advancements and whatnot. But that's been going on for such a long time. I would say that this is a lot bigger of a breakthrough. That the efforts put in place by the CIA and it resembles fear and anxiety, right? To go ahead and kill people is not like a decision made lightly. I know the government is pretty corrupt and whatnot. I get that, but still, the president, the sitting president, so many different like leaders. I tend to think that the electromagnetic nature of reality and even like it's how it's a little bit more powerful, if not a lot more powerful than gravity, might be the one single thing that they try to distract us from. And it required a series of fake physics, a lot of work put in to create an illusion that we have it all locked in here. And I think one of the reasons why Eric Weinstein is so afraid of Ed Witten and his dad is because I think that they're coming up with these ideas and these theories that are almost like working as facades, which means that and that's a theory, but you know what I mean? Like they work on their face, but they are still lacking the original truth, which is why that some of these gravity breakthroughs have been able to be kept secret. The work of Thomas Townsend Brown is in there too. Jesse Michaels is cracking that egg open pretty good. I love his research when it comes down to Townsend Brown. I found a lot of interesting stuff, but he found a lot more. What do you think about that?
I had no idea Jesse Michaels investigated Thomas Townsend Brown at all. He lost my interest after Grush and his time travel bullshit with that, you know. Yeah, time travel. If time travel is real, we could just go back and anyone could have killed the president, or we could just alter all reality. So there's no reality. You can't ever know what happened of anything anytime anywhere because you could just travel back in time and change it, right? So it eliminates causality and it eliminates reality. The whole structure of reality is based on cause and effect and a traceable lineage of events and the history. And once you've introduced time travel into the equation, just all that's thrown out the window. And I think it's like the ultimate intelligence tool to manipulate people through. They can believe it. You can believe anything once you can time travel. I just don't get it.
I love it. I love the time travel ideas. Now, I think they're fun, but I think you're also right in that like they represent like too many enigmas, right? They open up too many doors that you can't close again. It negates everything that we know about what we're in and whatnot. So I'm there with you. But yeah, Jesse Michaels
Yeah,
did a
it's
lot
like,
of research on T.T. Brown.
but I haven't. Maybe I'll look into that at some point. We've talked to his daughter, and I've done a lot of my own research into him myself. So I know I know some I know some stuff, and there's even more. We got a ton of stuff that I still haven't even looked through. That was from the Gray Barker archives. This whole museum that was had all of T.T. Brown's stuff from the 50s in it. So I have some of that stuff. It looks like some stuff maybe there. I don't know. It's just I know there's a lot more. The Homestead Industries. There's Vero Jessup Corporate. There's a whole ton of like stuff that happened in the 50s, man. That people have no idea about, and in the 40s too. Like there's this whole these X files, and then the FBI connection to those, and then them that being out of the office that was connected to Lee Harvey Oswald is just really really strange. Um, the Fred Chrisman connection, him being Fred Chrisman was identified as one of the three tramps that were in Dealey Plaza by Jim Garrison's investigation, right? And Fred Chrisman was subpoenaed before Jim Garrison's investigation, and I don't know if that's when he ended up dead before he could testify or what. Look that up. Fred Chrisman's just an interesting guy in general, because he's working with the Guy Bannister. He's working on all this UFO stuff, and then oh yeah, So after this, he's in the Garrison trial, the Roland Clay Shaw, right? Um, and then he's arrested with bringing a suitcase full of cash out to some psychiatrist's office in California, which probably William J. Bryan's office, who's doing this program in these MK Ultra assassins like Sirhan and stuff. So there's a whole and whole interesting career that this guy had. That's he's this. I swear, this Fred Chrisman guy is who Tommy Lee Jones's character in Men in Black is based on. You know. Oh, I see Aiden in the group here. What's up, anyone who just joined? Yeah, we're trying to have a space and talk about, all the new information on JFK that's come out lately. I think I did a summary last year, and that was like the 59-year anniversary, and now it's the 60-year anniversary. So, anyone else have anything to add, man? Please raise your hand or jump in on the conversation, because I'd love to, get more into the details. Anyone have more questions about any sort of details or things? I have some more questions now just from getting on and talking about some of this stuff, because a lot of this is new research to me too, and I haven't had a chance to really open up and like unload a lot of it. So now that I'm doing that, I'm having more like questions and avenues and things that I want to look into and do more research on myself. Um, yeah, there's so many different avenues opened up now with the Ruth Payne angle, the Roscoe White stuff with the Atsugi Air Force Base, the Civil Air Patrol stuff with David Ferry. D. Harold Byrd is the guy who set up and originated the Civil Air Patrol. So the guy who owns the School Book Depository building, the nephew of Admiral Byrd, who ran the Antarctica expeditions for the United States back in the when were those Antarctica expeditions with Harold Byrd? Anyway, gotta look that up. It's just a lot of stuff going on, and from 1947, end of World War II, Operation Paperclip, bringing all these Nazis here to the Redstone Arsenal, having them develop a secret space program that existed for, from 1945 until 1958. So that's 13 years of a secret space program that existed. 13 years before we officially had NASA. So a lot went on in 13 years of, all kinds of research into all kinds of things, including, we talked about metamaterials, early metamaterials research. So we're talking about ATIP now, 2018, and like, oh, we did, the government's researching metamaterials and this UFO stuff. Like, bro, we've been researching metamaterials since like the secret space program before NASA existed, dude. How crazy is that? I think that's just like, oh, hey, we got Aiden wants to talk. Oh, you want to co-host? All right, sure. Anyways, yeah, I don't know what's going on with it. Speaker requests approved. Okay. All right. Yeah. So,
Let's see. Test one, test two. Yeah, my only question on the JFK thing was I guess he created the Defense Intelligence Agency, or he signed a legislation for its creation. and then it was like within the week he was assassinated. So have you gone into that angle? Um, my understanding of that situation was the DIA was created in order to combat the Ubermensch that had created the CIA and the secrecy that they established. So
Well, it's I don't know about that angle. The thing is, right, Aiden, is you have what's called the constant. Sorry, you got to mute your mic while I'm talking real quick. Is this whole continuity of government group? There was this. What was the name of this movie with? I gotta look into that again. This was all in that cartoon documentary that I put out on Twitter a couple weeks ago about the JFK assassination. It went into a lot of really cool stuff. Um, but it talked about this whole continuity of government group and how there was this group of these leaders of this group in government that was set up to take over if the president got killed. And there's these emergency groups that just had all this unchecked power, and that they could just this whole idea that they could just take out the president at any time and that they're the ones who really had control, because there's one in line behind, Johnson's in line to take JFK's place, then someone else is in line to take their place, and then there's a whole chain of command that's all in line to take over as the controller and the leader. And there's this whole it goes way underground to places that the regular public doesn't know about. And these people are often on Fox News as commentators and advisors and experts and stuff, and we don't even know who they are, that they really exist in this capacity. And they found this whole hotel, like there was whole like hotel there was a tunnel from down to a whole secret hospital, like a whole secret underground complex that went from Washington, D.C. to this place in Virginia. There was like all these old facilities set up back in the 50s and 40s and 60s as evacuation plans and continuity of government plans, of like, well, what happens if, this gets nuked and that gets nuked? They had set all this kind of systems up way, like back then. Secret retreats where like the president would go, where there's this like whole bunker underground where they all meet. That's separate, from the main hotel. Is I did a whole. I've done videos on all this stuff. It's all on my channel somewhere. I've forgotten more than I could ever like remember about this stuff. But you go into all that, there's it's just amazing when you find out the history of this continuity of government program, because I don't say it the DIA, right, because there's all these intelligence agencies and stuff, but it's really this chain of command that's set up to take over in times of emergency and run the government. And that's exactly the kind of thing that happened on 9/11 too. With the continuity of government program, basically, the people that were in charge of protecting us on 9/11 were in charge of running the continuity of government programs, think tanks that were supposed to plan against things like 9/11. So the people that obviously had the planning knowledge to plan 9/11 were guys like Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, who Stewart Air Force Base to talk about those exact types of scenarios and things. It's this whole continuity of government program. Peter Dale Scott has pointed this out as being this hidden government group that links JFK to 9/11, and it's all like linked to the UFO file back way back behind the scenes. This continuity of government group was, of course, created under the National Security Act in 1947, which is, a couple days after Roswell. This National Security Act was passed It created the NSA, the CIA, and I don't know when the DIA was created. Let's look into that. Defense Intelligence Agency.
It's going to be right around then. The other thing I know about with the 9/11 conspiracy was the Aspen Strategy Group. It's up at the Aspen Institute. It was held underneath Dianne Feinstein for like the last 20 years, 20, 30 years at the Aspen Institute. I guess around August or September, they would have this strategy group come up and meet, stay at the Aspen Institute for a week, and they would get a briefing on the upcoming threats, both domestic and international. I was up there at 99 and 2000, and yeah, during the summer of 2000, I read a report that talked about, it alluded to threats, and that there may be some sort of terrorist threat. That I read through the article. It didn't say anything specific about 9/11, but the odd thing I remember about it is that uh, article, or that technical briefing, resurfaced down in Texas, and the media got a hold of it, and they spun it around 180 degrees, because these policymakers were being briefed on potentials, but the media, when they played it, were saying, well, these guys knew and did nothing about it, which is, I
Yeah, that
guess,
was like the whole story. Like the Able Danger came out and said, "Oh, well, they knew, and there was warnings. You know, they had this whole Able Danger program that was set up to track terrorists and stuff, and they knew about the 9/11 hijackers. There's a guy, Anthony Schaefer, that testified about all that stuff. Became a whistleblower. Um, he wrote a book. I bought the book and was very disappointed to find that over, 50% of the entire book was blacked out, completely redacted. Um, yeah, it's crazy when you get into some of that stuff. Yeah, so the DIA was, that the whole Able Danger program, and they had some of that tracking capabilities and stuff. But yeah, I'm not. I tend to think that these rogue CIA people are, the guys like George Joanidis. We got to get his file. Got to know more about that guy. Guys like David Sanchez Morales and the CIA assassinator, and hit teams. Very interesting characters. But yeah, the Abraham Bolden story, that blew me away, about the secret plot in Chicago to kill Kennedy. That they had like a whole nother patsy and a whole nother plot like set up in Chicago. I gotta find the guy's name from that plot. Let me look. I gotta find this. I want to look this up because I had that great JFK assassination documentary I watched and I posted it to YouTube just a few days ago. So it's got to be in my history if I can go back and find it. No, not this one. What did you guys think of Dark Journalist's new JFK 60 thing? Did you guys anyone see that? He hired some girl to like ask him his own questions, and it was kind of awkward because like you could tell like she didn't know anything about this stuff, and oh, here it is, dude. All right, I'm gonna share this. Oh, I gotta find this. All right, so this is called "Was President JFK Really Killed by CIA?" and it's called the Infographics Show. This was posted 11 days ago, and it has 1.2 million views. So here I am, basically repeating a lot of the information that was in this hour and 7-minute documentary here for my audience. But these guys are doing great work, man, got it out to 1.2 million people. This was really well put together. this documentary and really went into just a lot of stuff, dude, about Oswald in these. And God, I gotta find the case. Richard Case Nagel. Oh, here's the CIA. Here's the other. Valley is the guy. A far right lunatic obsessed with guns, paranoid, and a lone actor, you know? And the Secret Service had learned about this, so they rushed to Valley's house. They found an M1 rifle and 500 rounds of ammunition. So Thomas Arthur Valley, that's the guy's name if you want to look this up. Thomas Arthur Valley. Vallee. And this was the guy who was going to be Lee Harvey Oswald in Chicago. You know, instead of Lee Harvey Oswald being that infamous name of the assassin, we might be using, Thomas Arthur Valley instead. You know, although I think Lee Harvey Oswald has just this nicer ring to it, personally. But you know, Valley could have been the guy. You know, like Timothy McVeigh, Arthur Valley. I don't know. But anyways, Thomas Arthur Valley was the guy that they were going to set up in Chicago. This documentary goes into all this stuff and does a real nice job of explaining this stuff. So definitely, I'll post that in the description below so people can go check that out. Let me see, am I still on here? Invite some other people. Oh, what's up, Alien Girl and Stoned Ape? Long time no see, friends. Good to see you guys. Well, yeah, so this whole issue of Lee Harvey Oswald basically being set up as a patsy is interesting. This whole continuity of government program issue is interesting. This whole idea of the trade route going by the Dealey Plaza, going through Dealey Plaza right by that building, and how that motorcade route was selected is also interesting. There's a couple characters like Michael Crichton. Not Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton is the guy who wrote Jurassic Park. Jack Crichton. Same spelling. Jack Crichton is another interesting connection to the JFK assassination. Yeah, just look up Jack Crichton, JFK. Jack Alston Crichton. That's the guy's name. Jack Alston Crichton was born on a cotton plantation in Crichton, Louisiana in 1916. Graduated with a degree in petroleum engineering in 1937. During the Second World War, he served as with the Office of Strategic Services in Europe. In 1946, Everett DeGloyer recruited Crichton. According to Russ Baker, he started and ran a baffling array of companies which tended to change names frequently. These operated largely below the radar and fronted for some of North America's biggest names, including the Bronfmans, the DuPonts, and the Cohen-Loeb family of financiers. In 1952, Jack Crichton joined a syndicate that included Everett DeGloyer, and Clint Murchison to use connections in the government of General Francisco Franco to acquire rare drilling rights in Spain. The operation was handled by Delta Drilling, which was owned by Joe Zeppa. Oh, Joe Zeppa. Does anyone know who Joe Zeppa was?
Nope. You are.
Wow, Joe Zeppa is a very interesting name. So, Bush, George H.W. Bush can't remember where he was on November 22nd, 1963. But in Barbara Bush's memoirs, she mentions that a Joe Zeppa flew them out of Fort Worth to another airport. So they flew the pilot that took him from Dallas to Fort Worth was Joe Zeppa, and interesting that he's Bush is in Dallas, 1963, and flying around with this pilot on this plane, and winding up at the Kiwanis Club, and you know, so there's some interesting connections there. What was Bush doing? What was he on Joe Zeppa's plane? And what was the connection there with all these other, if Joe Zeppa owned Delta Drilling and that operation was going to, be involved with this operation, these OSS guys doing, drilling stuff with Clint Murchison. These are the guys who allegedly had the Murchison, meeting where the JFK assassination was allegedly discussed and planned by all these powerful people. The Empire Trust was also a major investor in the defense contractor General Dynamics. In 1956, Crichton started up his own spy unit, the 488th Military Intelligence Detachment. Crichton served as the unit's commander under Lieutenant George Whitmire, who was an overall commander of the Army Reserve units in East Texas. Crichton claimed that about 100 men in that unit and about 40 or 50 of them were from the Dallas Police Department. Wow, that's interesting, huh? You got 40 or 50 Dallas Police Department people. Oh, that's a good connect. If you were going to pull off an assassination and cover up of a murder of the president in Dallas, those would be some good connections to have, wouldn't you say? Go ahead. I'm Stoned Ape has had her hand up. I'm gonna.
Lyndon B. Johnson, JFK wanted to pull out of the war, right? And then Lyndon B. Johnson, like 14 days later, executed sending the troops off. And Texas is like a super red state. I've been following the Lee Harvey Oswald parody account all day, just because he's posting a lot. It's just very interesting. I posted his Patsy video in your nest. If you check that out today, it gives a lot of good perspectives, as if he were Lee Harvey Oswald from his vantage points, and explaining how his day went. So I recommend that.
Oh, awesome! I'll definitely check that out. That sounds like a lot of people are on a truth spilling marathon, and that's awesome. If only our mainstream media would be so diligent. Yeah, there's the whole Gulf of Tonkin incident that happened like almost a year later, right? August 2nd, 1964. And that's largely been considered a staged event, or they basically like knew that those were bad waters and ordered this boat to go in there, knowing that they would get captured and taken over, um, and that it would be create this reason for why we had to go to war in Vietnam, right? So yeah, that's a common strategy, that you set up this event, you attack, either attack yourself and blame it on the enemy, like Operation Himmler, like Hitler did in Poland to start the war against Poland, the invasion of Poland. He blamed
9/11.
Or 9/11. Yeah, exactly. It's a strategy. You can attack yourself and blame your political enemy, and and it works in any country, and it works on any group of people. People are quick to, jump to conclusions, quick to jump to blame, and want revenge and justice before they want real evidence or answers. That they're more apt to seek those things, and as we're seeing right here in this right here in the start of World War III. It's like I didn't know who attacked what hospital or what happened for about a week there, until the news came through. But meanwhile, people are like, we need retaliation right away, and people should be bombed and killed tomorrow. It's like, it's just crazy, because that's not how you handle things here domestically, anywhere. It takes
Yeah,
years. Court cases get caught up for years before they prove what really happened in events, here in our modern, justice system. But when we're talking about bombing other countries and going to war, they don't hold the same standards at all.
I'd like to see Ben Shapiro or others like him to get drafted if they have like such strong positions on war, because they obviously like have no idea what it actually looks like.
Yeah. These guys have lived in an ivory tower their entire lives. They've eaten off silver spoons, and never even felt like what it is like to be hungry and starving, or not knowing when, having to struggle just to get your paycheck so you can make rent, or buy food. They don't know what that's like. Live in a completely different world than most people. The people that they subjugate and blame for, the world's problems too, at the end of the day. But anyways, yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. But hey, we're doing what we can. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are exposing a lot of great truth, and that's what's awesome. Also, the guy Mark Gruber of America's Untold Stories. Have you guys seen that YouTube channel? Between dark journalists and America's Untold Stories, they've done so much great JFK work. It's really, people have to I still have to go back and really listen and dig through all that stuff, because it's just so much. You never realize that it's like, wow, it really has been covered up for 60 years, and it goes so deep. And I remember, like, a couple years back, at one anniversary, they're watching this, like, time. It was like Time, or I don't know, I forget what, CNN or one of these mainstream news channels, giving this whole spiel on the Kennedy assassination and how all the conspiracy theories are debunked, and don't look into, like, all this stuff. It was, we've proven that it was Lee Harvey Oswald, and we can put the theories to rest, and there's all this reassurance and bullshit, and chest puffing of, like, these official experts and people who, Vincent Bugliosi, the CIA, the lawyer who turns out to be like the MK Ultra lawyer, um, wrote the biggest book on, this huge document book on the JFK assassination, which was supposed to be the end all book, the definitive, text, and no one can ever outdo him, because it's 6,000. I don't know how many pages it is. It's this thick, massive work, and it reads so boring, and, like, the details of the color of the carpets of the hotels, and of the hotel that he was at, and all this, like, crazy, like, useless, boring detail about completely irrelevant, like, facts, nothing to do with the conspiracy, and, like, covering all that up and all those angles up completely. Yeah, these books, and these people like Vince, Bugliosi, just despicable what they've done. You know, he's like the Alan Spector. These professional obfuscators and liars that just work to, spin lies and cover-ups for the government. And there's been so many of them. How, I mean, how do you get into that mindset where you're like, oh, these are conspiracy theorists and I'm going to do away with this, and I have to like stand up for justice and what's right, because you think you're going to like get people to trust in the government again, and that's going to make everything okay, and all this go away. It's just I just don't get it. Here we are, almost in World War. We're pretty much, yeah. I think we're unofficially declared World War III. It's happening. It's just not officially declared, and who knows what is going to happen in the next year. But here we are going into the holidays and to 2014, 2024. Sorry, decade off here. Yeah, I just hope that we can call I almost want to call my senators, call my congressman today and be like, hey, did you know about this? Did you know about that? Just throw some JFK facts at them and be like, what the heck? Call the news, I don't know who else you could call like that to really raise a stink about this, because it just seems like these people are complicit or complacent or deny it, just in complete denial. Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, anyone else have anything to add? I wanna get going here, and maybe I'll start up another space later. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Because I mean, I have so much more I could talk about and stuff. But definitely go check out America's Untold Stories. Dark Journalist has some really great research into the JFK file and all that stuff too. Um, I'd be repeating a lot of their research and a lot of their stuff. Look into the whole history of the Nazi Bell. I mean, the Nazis' secret space programs and all that stuff. Joseph Farrell has some really great books and research into that stuff. We're just beginning to unravel and crack the code on all this deeper physics that's been erased and hidden from us since the 50s and covered up in these secret space programs. And I think JFK was set to bring a lot of that secret technology, those secret space programs, and a lot of what the CIA was doing. He was going to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and really put a lot of these technologies in the forefront and pushed for us to go to space. And I think we'd be in a completely different world right now if those monsters didn't, succeed in killing him and covering it up for the past 60 years, and the atrocities they've committed elsewhere in government. And since it's just it makes me sick to my stomach sometimes, and it's maybe it's bad for my mental health. Maybe it's bad for our mental health to be talking about this, to be, but I think it's good for America's mental health overall, because we're like a sick country who's just trying to hide it and deny it. It's like, no, like you need to just like someone's got to speak about the elephant in the room, and we got to wake up and face the music. And if it takes, I don't know. And then it's hard because it's like, what are you gonna do? Like tell your family at Thanksgiving? Like, what the fuck are your family gonna do about any of this stuff? It's like, I don't know. How do we get real answers? How do we get real justice 60 years later? And how do we end the cover up and the lies and all, and bring that UFO file out? Because you have guys like that have been really talking about these secret technologies and really talking about the programs. I've been talking about metamaterials for 20 years. Metamaterials have been around since the 40s, like the anechoic tiles from the Nazis and Operation Paperclip. Look up German sub U-480, and it used these stealth tiles. It's like it's all there, but you know people would rather listen to Lou Elizondo tell them that they created metamaterials and with under ATIP in 2008 or something. It's just like people are just oblivious in this UFO field too. It's I don't know what to say about all that. You know, go believe it's time travelers from the future and not like technology that we've been developing, working on, and keeping classified for decades. I'd much rather believe, much sooner believe that. There's no evidence for time travel, like, and I got people telling me that it's my opinion that time travel doesn't exist. That's your opinion. No, 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 no. It is absolute fact that you cannot travel to the past. And if I'm wrong, show me an experiment. It's not my fucking opinion. It's a friggin' fact. And it's just nuts that people are so brainwashed and deluded by this nonsense that they'll get into that. But yeah, I'll go check out Jesse Michaels' thing on Thompson Brown. Maybe if you said that, if Tupacabra tells me I got to go check that out, then I'm gonna go check that out. But I've kind of written off Jesse Michaels after he wrote me off about a year and a half ago. He wrote me an email and I sent him like a whole bunch of stuff and was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is what we're about. We'd love to talk to you, but he just like, I don't know where he's at, man.
Yeah, I don't know. He's on his own little thing, but definitely, man, that episode with Grush is more of a documentary that has some amazing information about Townsend Brown.
What it's you said the Townsend Brown stuff is in the Grush documentary?
Yeah, he snuck it in there. So you're forced to watch that too. and he mentions it again during the Michael Masters doc. So I mean, you're gonna have to really bob and weave in this.
I'm all set, bro. I've done a lot of my own research into to Townsend Brown, and I got a lot of original documents and other stuff too. So I cannot sit through time travel Mike Masters, dude, like telling stories that none of it's backed up, zero facts, and like it's all just fucking stories. I cannot sit through that, and I'm not going to. Like, if you want to believe in time travel and that aliens are time travelers from the future, you can live in non-reality and tell me that I'm opinionated and like all the other excuses people had for why they don't have a single shred of fucking evidence for time travel anywhere. Um, I don't know. It's just, yeah, yeah. Good luck with that. I'm sorry, Jesse. I'm sorry. Like like that and fucking David Grush, who's not a fucking whistleblower, has nothing but stories and is told friggin' he's Lou Elizondo fucking 2.0. Basically carrot on a stick. Yeah, I can't talk about this. It's classified, and like, yeah, I'm the expert and I was deep inside and I know all this about the program. Trust me. Oh, I know so much, but I can't tell you. It's like, get the fuck out of my fucking face, bro. I've been doing this for 20 years and I've declassified and exposed more fucking real bullshit than any of you goddamn fucking fake clown assholes. And you can all go to fucking hell and shut the fuck up. Because, like, literally, like, it makes me fucking sick and disgusted. This is counterintelligence. This is deep state UFO propaganda. And fuck Jesse Michaels. Fucking, he had his chance fucking years ago to talk to me and fucking get on some real shit, but he'd rather talk to deep state fucking propagandists and retard fucking time travel believers. Fuck that motherfucker. All right, I'm out.